Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff.
And I'm Alex.
As always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please join our community by subscribing to us on the socials. Our handle on all platforms is at N2E Fantasy. We are also available on all major podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy. Alex, what do we have on today's show?
On this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, we are continuing our top 15 ranks for each position, and today is our top 15 quarterbacks for 2024. So, no relevant news today. We're just going straight into our ranks. So, Jeff, why don't you start us off with your number 15 quarterback for 2024?
Absolutely. So coming in at number 15 is going to absolutely astonish you, but it is a rookie. It is a rookie quarterback. Coming in at number 15 is Jayden Daniels, quarterback, Washington.
Interesting. And I'll tell you why in a moment. But my number 15 is your homeboy, Trevor Lawrence. I'm surprised he made my top 15, but he just barely squeaked by. My number 14 is Jayden Daniels. So I have him one spot higher, but we're right next to each other here.
Wow, I didn't see that coming. I had him actually 2 spots higher the other day before I was reconfiguring these. So I was like, he's going to make fun of me for having him this high. And I talked myself into putting other quarterbacks higher. There's a lot of quarterbacks this year. We should say that right off the gate. Lawrence didn't make my top 15, just so we're very clear on the get-go here. But my number 14 is Jordan Love. After the second half last year, I don't know how you don't consider him for your top 15. He may not be in your top 15, or he might be your next pick. We'll find out very shortly. But Jordan Love at my number 14 spot.
So talking about these two guys, Jayden Daniels, it's the rushing upside that obviously keeps him in the top 15 for both of us. I do think that he might be putting himself in situations to get injured, so he would be higher if I wasn't convinced that he's going to get hurt at some point. But Jordan Love, him continuing on to a season like he finished out last year, if he continues that for the whole season, I could see him potentially being higher. I just don't fully trust it yet because I need to see more. There's no alpha wide receivers there yet, but he's proven he can spread the ball around, so I don't hate that spot for Jordan Love at all.
All right, you ready to jump into my number 13 then?
Yep, let's do it.
All right, coming back from a torn Achilles, Kirk Cousins is my number 13 quarterback.
This is it's interesting because I feel like we're one spot off from each other here. So I actually have Jordan Love at 13, and I have Kirk Cousins as my number 12. So we're just slightly off, pretty close here. I agree that I think he's in a great situation. It's an indoor stadium for Kirk Cousins. He's got two young talents in London and in Pitts that we hope have excellent seasons this year. And it's a relatively wide open NFC South. So it seems to be smooth sailing as long as he recovers from that Achilles just fine. So I like it, Jeff. Who do you have at 12?
Well, you're going to really hate this one, but it is your former quarterback, Deshaun Watson. And I believe that the numbers that he was putting up last year in his complete game, if he could put that up over a season, he's a QB1 this year.
I can see that potentially being the case if he comes back. He hasn't been that fantasy relevant in 4 years. So he's been benched, sidelined, suspended, injured. He hasn't quite lived up to that contract that they gave him, the fully guaranteed massive deal. I think that if he doesn't put up this kind of value, then I think Cleveland will look for a way out of that contract, even if they have to absorb massive salary. So while I can see the upside, I don't think it's likely that he'll finish in the top 15. I think there's a good chance Winston comes in and plays for him a couple games this year if he has bad performances. So he's not in my top 15.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that happening as well. But this would be strictly an upside pick. And if I'm picking the 12th quarterback, I'm also probably going to pick the 13th or 14th quarterback just to make sure that I'm like hedging my bets a little bit. This isn't like Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes pick here, where you can only go with one quarterback in a redraft league. All right, so I think we're on my number 11 then. Number 11 is your boy Anthony Richardson, and for the same reason of Deshaun Watson, if he could put together a season of what he has shown, Anthony Richardson will finish as a QB1 as well. However, same thing with Watson with me. I'm going to be drafting that 13th, 14th, 15th quarterback to make sure that I have some sort of safety net in case this goes horribly wrong like it did last year.
Yeah, I can get that. And I think the only reason why he would be this low on your list is you're factoring in potential injuries. But if he's healthy, he'll probably rise up that list. I have him higher because I've been higher on him. But my number 11 is Joe Burrow coming off that wrist injury, playing three tough defenses in his own division twice a year. I don't see him finishing as a top five for those reasons. So I have him as a number 11. If he could be healthy, if the risk isn't a problem after all, if he can expose his divisional defenses, he could probably finish higher than this. But number 11 is where I feel comfortable with Joe Burrow. How do you feel about Joe Burrow at that spot?
I think it's a little bit low, but we all do know how Joe Burrow starts during the year. So maybe that first month of the season, you may want to have a different quarterback that can start. Like, let's say you pair him with Jared Goff, and so if he has a bunch of dome games to begin the year, and we know that he's much better in the dome than he is outside, like there's certain things I would do with Joe Burrow if I owned him. I probably would be conservative with him for the first month of the season until he gets rolling.
All right, that's fair enough. My next guy here, number 10 for me, is Brock Purdy with San Francisco. He's got all the weapons to throw to. No matter what you think of him, he's got a great offensive-minded head coach and multiple weapons that are almost top of their positions. But I feel like Deebo Samuel and Ayuk, as long as he stays there this season, Kittle, McCaffrey, those guys really help Brock Purdy. I don't think there's any competition behind Brock Purdy. It seems like he's on his way to locking up potentially the long-term gig with the performances he's had the last 2 years. So I expect that to continue, and I feel good about him being number 10. Jeff, how do you feel about Brock Purdy here, and who do you have?
Well, I feel great, especially because he's my number 10 quarterback as well. I think that he offers more consistency than Anthony Richardson. I know you mentioned that if Anthony Richardson was healthy a whole year, I would have him a little bit higher. You're probably right, but not too much higher because I haven't seen him put it on an NFL field over a long stretch yet. So I would need to see some of that first. He could be the number one quarterback next year. I do concede that 100%. Like, he could be the number one quarterback off people's boards next year. Or the Colts could be looking for a new quarterback this offseason if he gets injured again this year. So totally two different realms of possibility. But Brock Purdy entering what is really a contract year for him. It's year 3. So it's not like he's like a fully developed quarterback or anything yet because he's still young. He's still on his rookie deal, but he can negotiate for a new deal after this year. So he's kind of playing for it. So, and not to mention, he's got a stud cast of all-stars around him.
I agree. Who do you have at number 9?
My number 9 quarterback is one of my favorites, Justin Herbert. And he's going to go in here. He's going to go in with Harbaugh. He's going to throw a lot more than people think he's going to throw. Probably less than last year. So let's hold our horses on that. But in 2021, he did finish as quarterback 2, so that is in his realm of possibilities. And I just think that the Chargers brought in enough weapons to help him out this year, and they will have to throw the ball a bit because they're in a division with Patrick Mahomes. So there's at least 2 games that they're going to be throwing the ball a ton. So what say you about Justin Herbert here?
Jeff, I boosted his stats a little bit in my projections, and he still didn't finish top 15 for me. So I believe in his talent 100%. It's system and supporting cast that I have concerns with. I still think he'll be a usable fantasy asset. I think he'll be hyper efficient in this system, but I don't think this is going to be his fantasy year this season. So I can't buy in to him now. I can buy into him as a dynasty option, but not as a redraft option here. So he's not in my top 15. But Who is in my top
Understood.
15 is Mr. Jared Goff at number 9 for me. He has 14 straight indoor games to start the year. I think he's going to be a regular season hero for fantasy leagues out there. Now, where you might have more concerns is in the actual playoffs. So I think that the weeks 15 through 18, I think you're going to have potentially some concerns there for a couple of those matches. So you might have another quarterback to sub with them at that point. Maybe someone like a rookie who gets hot later in the year that you can sub in for him. That's my only concern, and that's why he's at 9 and not higher. But I do think, real NFL wise, I think Jared Goff to me is someone I'm potentially targeting for MVP because I think that there's that much upside for him.
We will see, but he did not make my top 15 this year. He's just outside of it. He's in the group with Rodgers, Lawrence, and obviously Goff. So,
Jeff, what are you doing over there, man? What are you even doing?
well, when I did out projections from number 10 at 319 points all the way through number 20 was 289 points. So there's roughly a 30-point difference between quarterbacks 10 and 20. So there is like a nice little fall there that like you just got to pick the guy that you like. Even quarterback 22 is 286. So it's only 33 points off from number 10. So it's not that big of a difference.
I think this year there is 22 startable quarterbacks in fantasy leagues. So, I mean, if you miss out on some of your favorite guys, I wouldn't worry about it too much. I think you'll be able to find at least streaming options later on. But
Can
let's
I ask you a
go.
question really quickly?
Sure.
Is Geno Smith in your top 22 startable guys, or is he outside of it now?
Oh, he's outside.
Yeah, he's outside for me too. What about Baker Mayfield?
He's outside.
Me too. I just wanted to see because those guys were the last 2 years had darling years, but under Dave Canales, we know is the Carolina Panthers head coach now.
I do think that there's some optimism for Geno in the new system. It's more vertical. It's more akin to his talents than they ran last year. But I'm not saying that Geno won't keep his job the whole year, but I think Sam Howell is a bigger threat than most backup quarterbacks. So there is a chance that Sam Howell comes in for a couple games. Also, Geno can sometimes have health injuries himself, like health issues. So I think that there's a non-zero chance Sam Howell plays at least a couple games, which to me lowered Geno out of the top 15 consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to know if they were in that top 22 of your startable guys.
I think Geno and Baker are going to have streamable weeks. I think people will be happy with some of the weeks for them. All right.
It's good. I mean, if anything, if you're not going to get one of the top 4 quarterbacks, in my opinion, you probably should wait this year.
Yeah.
The top 4 could win you a week just based on their legs or their arms or whatever that they have going on. But the rest of them, like, you can just throw them in a hat and they can end up in any order, any week.
Yeah, I think it's more like top 9 guys that I feel most confident about. Everyone else can potentially be a streamer. So I think you can expand it out to 9. But if you want to be real technical, the top 5 or 6 are going to be your top performers because of rushing upside. My next guy here, and it's lower than consensus has been, my home team's quarterback, CJ Stroud. I know he has all the weapons in the world now. He has a lot of options, but he doesn't provide that rushing upside. So he's lower on the list than the guys that I have in front of him for that reason only. I do think it's entirely possible that he could throw for 5,000 yards and maybe 40 plus touchdowns. That's within the realm of possibility. I just would temper expectations because I want to draft him as a reasonably high quarterback and not draft him for a ceiling.
Absolutely.
So, Jeff, who do you have at number 8? And how do you feel about Stroud there?
I think you're right in the ballpark, but I actually have him a little bit higher than you, which doesn't surprise me because you are still hedging your bets as a Texans fan a little bit there.
I'm trying to be reasonable and not let my own fan bias lead me here. So I think he can absolutely finish higher. I just think there's a lot of competition at quarterback position.
Yeah, I do the same thing with the Panthers. I automatically downgrade them in my head. So anyone that tries to give me a Carolina Panther, unless your name was like Christian McCaffrey back in the day, like I was pretty much out on them immediately because I didn't want to have two forms of heartbreak at the same time. Bad team, bad fantasy team. So I was like, let me just keep a separation here of fantasy and real life team. But my number 8, and we'll just hop into this real quick here, is going to be Kyler Murray. I just think he has a ton of upside. He has all the weapons in the world now. He's a year removed from that ACL injury, so he should be able to get his rushing ability back this year. The sky is kind of the limit for him. He's a guy that could jump into the top 5 easily this year. And he has had top 10 years finishing at quarterback previously. So we'll see. But now he's got Marvin Harrison Jr.
I actually have him a little bit higher than you this year, Jeff. But my number 7, I'm sorry, you haven't done your 7 yet?
I haven't done my 7 yet.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you want to jump me, you can. But it's a guy that we've already talked about. It's Joe Burrow. It's a guy that I would pair with for the first half of the season. Pairing him and Jared Goff would be the ultimate quarterback combination because by the time Burrow hits his stride, it's going to be the playoffs, and Jared Goff's going to be outdoors again, and you're going to want to start Burrow. So that I think enough has been said about Joe Burrow. He'll start slow. That's it.
All right. Well, number 7, I have your boy Dak Prescott. I think he finished high last year, but he had a lot of quarterback injuries or suspensions that would have potentially finished in front of him. He doesn't have as much rushing upside as the guys that I have in front of him. So for me, he's a safe number 7. I feel like Dallas is going to be passing a lot because they haven't done much to address their run game. I think Zeke might be a goal line back for them, short yardage back. He'll probably be the nominal lead back for them, but I envision them passing a lot like they did last year. So Dak to me is number 7. I feel like that's fair, and I even put him in front of my own team, CJ Stroud. So, Jeff, you should take the win there. That is. How do you feel about Dak being at this spot? I assume that you have him at one of the spots in front of there, though.
You are correct. I feel like you're a little bit low on him, but given all of the talk this year that we've had so far, so from January to July here, you have been very down on Dak and very high on CJ Stroud. So like the order of those two doesn't really make sense with everything that you've said this year, but the order is correct in my opinion, but you're a little low on both of them.
Again, Stroud doesn't offer much rushing upside at all. Dak, not as much as he used to. But I have Kyler Murray at 6 purely because of his rushing upside. I don't think I even have Kyler passing 4,000 yards this year, but he still finishes as a top 6 quarterback on my projections here, in my rankings. Kyler Murray, that rushing upside puts him ahead of Dak, in my opinion. He also has, in my opinion, better weapons to throw to. I mean, CeeDee Lamb is the better single piece, but the combination of supporting cast is better for Kyler Murray. So that's something to consider as well. So, Jeff, I have Kyler 2 spots ahead of you. How do you feel about that?
It feels weird. Do you want to trade for him in our Dynasty League? Because I have 3 quarterbacks that are in my top 8, and I could offload one, you know?
I just feel like you would ask for too much, so probably not.
Inspire me. That has become my saying in that league, and everyone rolls their eyes. But once you have a good team, you gotta inspire me to trade my guys that I work so hard to obtain.
If you're shopping your guys, I'm not going to inspire you. If it's someone that you're desperately clutching onto, then I've got to convince you to part with them. Like, that's fair. But you've been shopping Dak, you've been shopping Murray.
Josh Allen is available too.
Yeah, I'm not going to pay the price to get a quarterback. I just don't value the position that much, unless it's a 2-quarterback league or super flex, which it's not. So who do you have at number 6?
So my number 6 is going to be CJ Stroud, and basically he has all of the weapons. He has plentiful talent around him, kind of like Brock Purdy, but I do think he's more talented than Brock Purdy is. And I do think he has a better arm than Brock Purdy as well, so that's kind of why I have him higher, but they're kind of in the similar situations right now with a great running back and a great receiving core and a good to great tight end. Very similar. D'Amico Ryans left 49ers and went to Houston in kind of similar situations.
Yeah, I don't hate it there, but I just don't know about paying a premium on CJ when he doesn't have that rushing upside. I feel like fifth quarterback, you're going to be drafting him in redrafts probably fourth round at the latest. I think that's typically where he would go, or
So,
third round.
so we'll get to this towards the end. But I do have a rule with drafting quarterbacks, especially in a one quarterback league. I would take the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in maybe rounds 3 and 4, and then all the rest would jump until round 8. So like whoever's available on my top of my list around round 8 would be the quarterback that I select. So I know we're doing
I
quarterback ranks, but overall ranks where they fall lower because there's so many good ones.
My strategy in redrafts when it comes to quarterbacks is never to take a quarterback until the ninth round. So
Oh, see?
So I've gotten Kirk Cousins, I've gotten Jared Goff, I've gotten Baker during a hot streak, Geno during a hot streak, I've gotten multiple rookies who outperformed. Like I've gotten Patrick Mahomes in the 10th round in his rookie or his first season starting. I've gotten Deshaun Watson in the 11th round before. You easily could find gems and streamable quarterbacks later. I don't want to waste a pick on a premium quarterback because you can always trade for a top quarterback later on in the season to somebody who desperately needs depth because they sacrificed a high draft pick in a redraft league. That's just how I view it. And like I said, I'm not high on QB value in single quarterback redraft leagues.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Either strategy works. I think we're on my number 5 now.
Yes.
That's where you got Dak Prescott. He finished as quarterback 3 last year. So I do, to your point, there was a bunch of quarterbacks that were either trying to figure stuff out, a la Mahomes, or injured. So he might come back down to earth slightly here, but he's still in my top 5 of quarterbacks. And I expect another good year because you're going to have to throw to Lamb a lot this year. You're going to throw to Ferguson. You're going to have to even throw to Brandon Cooks. Like, Brandon Cooks is still going to be a thing because they don't have the running back in place to be able to really run the ball a lot this year. I think Zeke will take a good chunk of things, but I do think at the end of the day, Zeke will not hold up for 400 touches this year.
I think Zeke is going to get that many. I'd be surprised if he got 250, honestly. But for me, it's been they've had a season with just McCarthy and the new offense without the previous coaching staff there. So people have seen the plays that they run. They now know that they don't have a threatening running game. They really only have the tight end Ferguson and Lamb as the only real threatening receiving options. So I think more teams will go into pass defense and try to double or try to nullify CeeDee Lamb the best that they can. And I think that may lower Dak's upside this year. So that's something that I'm thinking about. But I do see him being in the top 7, top 8 in most leagues either way. But I just can't put him that high this year.
No, I don't blame you on that one. I think that I don't think I'll get him. Well, maybe I will. Maybe I will because maybe he'll be available in the 8th or 9th round when I do look at quarterback. As long as I get one of these top 15, 2 of these top 15, really, I'll be happy to go through the whole year with them. All right, who do you have at number 5?
I have at number 5 Anthony Richardson.
Oh my God!
I have him slated to miss 3 games. He has less than 3,300 passing yards, but his rushing upside is tremendous, as well as I think his touchdown upside is tremendous for both passing and rushing, just because I think they have a lot of weapons there as well, at least at the receiver position. So they have Pittman, they have Downs, they now have AD Mitchell. I'm very positively excited for him. He only is at 5 for me because I'm anticipating at least 3 weeks out. If he finishes the whole year, he's going to be the number one quarterback most likely, or number two behind the usual suspect there. But Jeff, I know it's a little high for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot because I haven't seen it in the NFL just yet. But he was a top pick last year, and he can give a shot of why he is a top pick this upcoming year. What's interesting, though, is that CJ Stroud was a higher NFL pick on your team, had a better season, and falls below Anthony Richardson, who had a worse season last year, a lower pick. I think you love the rushing upside a little, maybe too much.
This is fantasy football and not real NFL football. In real NFL football, I trust CJ Stroud to win more games and be a better overall quarterback. In fantasy football, Anthony Richardson averaged points per the games that he played as the number one quarterback over that time period. So if he does that for most of a season or all of a season, I think this is a very reasonable spot to put him.
Absolutely. And in the background, I'm going to have to figure out if what you just said is correct or not correct, because you caught me off guard with the most fantasy points in the weeks that he was active. Which weeks are you counting, just so we're on the same playing field here?
You'll have to look at the ones that he finished so earlier on in the season.
So through 2 weeks, he was quarterback 8. Through 3 weeks, he didn't play. So this is going to be a lot harder using a tool here.
Yeah, you have to take the segmented games out. But we can move on to my number 4, and I actually moved him down a spot, and that is Jalen Hurts, the Philadelphia quarterback. I don't think he's going to get as many tush-push plays this year. I think they're going to try it. It may not be as effective without Jason Kels there at center, but I still think that he's going to have a really tremendous year. They now have a better running back in Saquon Barkley, so they should be in better situations. I think Barkley's probably actually going to get rushing touchdowns, unlike Swift last year. And I think he's also going to be a weapon out of the backfield as a receiver, along with two of the best top 24 wide receivers in A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. So I can really see him being potent again, but I don't think he has top 2, top 3 potential that he had the last couple years.
Right. So we are on to my number 4.
Yes. And your feedback on Jalen Hurts being number 4.
I mean, I could go back and forth between 3 and 4. My 4 is going to be Lamar Jackson. He finished 4th last year. I don't really think that they added too much this year. They have Derrick Henry, which is probably going to cut into a little bit of his rushing ability. So I will be a little bit lower on Lamar Jackson, probably for very similar reasons that you're lower on Jalen Hurts going into this year.
So does that mean Jalen Hurts is your number 3?
Yes. Sorry.
I have him flip-flop from you, so I have Lamar Jackson at number 3. I think either of these guys is a reasonable selection there, and I think you can, like you said, flip-flop back and forth between them. I think Lamar Jackson, yes, he might have fewer rushing touchdowns than he did last year as well, but Mark Andrews being healthy for the whole season is going to be pretty crucial for red zone targets. So I think it kind of offsets a little bit there, but I can see Lamar Jackson wanting to prove his chops more as a quarterback, especially the way their playoff hopes ended last year. So I just have Lamar ahead, and I think he might get more rushing yards with the focus on the defense being on Henry. So I think that'll be an interesting wrinkle as well.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. These guys are kind of like their own little sub tier of the top guys, and they both have a slight downgrade this year because they did acquire better running back, so they may run the ball a little bit less, and that is one of their strongest suits in fantasy is their rushing ability.
So now I'm guessing we have the same 2 as 2 and 1, probably in the same order. So I have Patrick Mahomes at number 2. I think he's going to have positive regression this year. He has a better receiving core, and I think that his numbers are going to be more efficient. They're going to be more explosive. I think he'll be closer to being the 5,000-yard Patrick Mahomes that we're used to with 40-plus touchdowns. I think that's likely or possible at the very least. So I have Patrick Mahomes at number 2. Jeff, Is that where you have him? And who's your number one?
So I do have Patrick Mahomes at number 2. Interesting stat here. After week 11, which is important, and the Bills did have a bye week here, and I want to be clear, none of the other top 5 in this group had a bye week during that time. Josh Allen was the number 1 fantasy quarterback from week 11 onward since Joe Brady took over that offense. So that's a pretty big distinction there. If we're going to be talking about average per game, he was on par with Lamar during that time because Lamar did have a bye week and he took off week 18. But no one else was at 24, 23, 22 points per game other than Lamar and Josh Allen. We expect Lamar to take a step back, as we mentioned. And that's kind of why Josh Allen's my number 1 quarterback. They're going to ask him to do even more this year. Now, does that put him into an injury risk bubble? Yes, it does. But I do think by far, I think within a 50-ish point margin over Patrick Mahomes that Josh Allen will finish quarterback 1 this year. And he probably deserves, as we talked about earlier, his first NFL MVP this year.
So I also have Josh Allen, surprise, surprise, at number 1. One thing I like about him that you haven't mentioned is he's going to play all the games. I don't think he gets benched at all or will accept being benched, even if they're in the number 1 position. I actually have him having 35 more points than Patrick Mahomes. I don't know, like Josh Allen, his point-wise, I don't think it's going to be necessarily as high as last year. They lost Diggs. We don't really know how this wide receiver group's going to shake out. We don't know if he's going to be able to spread it and collect stats himself, kind of like Jordan Love did last year, like Patrick Mahomes did last year without a true number 1 target. So we'll see how that goes. They also lost Gabe Davis. So we don't know, is Shakir going to be the guy? Is Curtis Samuel going to be the guy? Is the new wide receiver Cole going to be the guy? Is it going to be the tight end Kincaid? We don't know exactly how it's going to shake out. But one thing we know is Josh Allen is going to run for a lot of touchdowns, and he's going to sling the ball downfield in risky positions that are either going to pay off huge or be an interception, but that just means he'll be back out later to play catch up. So he's the best quarterback option in fantasy football, and I don't think anyone can argue that.
No, did you give us the point difference between Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen after your projection?
I said 35.
35. So okay, so we're in the ballpark of each other, but and that equates out to be two extra points per week just to have Josh Allen. It's pretty interesting.
Josh Allen to me is probably the only quarterback I'd be willing to take high and break my rule for, but someone's always gonna draft him before I do, I feel like. So we'll see. We can just quickly recap our top 15s for you guys in order, and I'll start first. So I have at number 15, Trevor Lawrence. Number 14, Jaden Daniels. Number 13, Jordan Love. Number 12, Kirk Cousins. Number 11, Joe Burrow. Number 10, Brock Purdy. Number 9, Jared Goff. Number 8, CJ Stroud. Number 7, Dak Prescott. Number 6, Kyler Murray. Number 5, Anthony Richardson. Number 4, Jalen Hurts. Number 3, Lamar Jackson. Number 2, Patrick Mahomes. And number 1, Josh Allen.
All right. You ready for mine here? Number 6, CJ Stroud. Number 5, Dak Prescott. Number 4, Lamar Jackson. Number 3, Jalen Hurts. Number 2, Patrick Mahomes. And number 1, and this year's MVP, frontrunner, Josh Allen.
All right. Well, we've definitely got some differences and some similarities there, so that's going to be interesting, and can't wait to see who is more correct at the end of the year. It's going to be me. All right, that does it for another episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you all for downloading and listening to this episode, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment and share the show. Every little bit helps.
And you can find us on all podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy and with our handle at N2E Fantasy on all social media platforms. Please join our community and give us a follow. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember, it's truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again.
Everybody.